Welcome to today's session titled Succeeding in a Changing World with Sage 300 and Orchid. Initially, we were going to title this session Keeping Sage 300 Users Happy. But we decided that we needed to really demonstrate the success we've experienced over the last number of years with Sage 300 and Orchid and Sage 300 end users and business partners, and demonstrate that success with actual trends. We thought we'd run through Orchid's fastest growing modules, and those are on the collaboration front, notes and document management link. On the streamlining and financial processes front, EFT Processing. On the tailoring and automation front, Extender. And we wanted to run through how to take advantage of these opportunities and really add value. And as a result, we thought a more appropriate thing to call the session would be Succeeding in a Changing World with Sage 300 and Orchid. Now, a bit more about ourselves, for those of you who don't know us. We have over 6,000 Sage 300 sites scattered around the world in over 80 countries. We've been in business for over 25 years, and we actively work with over 450 Sage business partners around the world who deploy and support our various modules. We're based in Sydney, Australia. We've won a number of industry awards over the years, and we have 13 integrated modules with an average of 2 modules per site. Now, I mentioned that we'd be running through some actual trends with you rather than just say that we had been doing well over this period of time. And here on the left-hand side, top left-hand side, we have our annual revenue for our shrink wrap software development for Sage 300. And as you can see, going way back to 2005 through to 2022, we've enjoyed good consistent growth, which is actually equated to average year-on-year growth over the last 17 years of 23%. And interestingly, on the right-hand side, we've got a graph of current modules and users. Now, those are modules and user counts of sites which are actively paying either maintenance, software assurance, or subscriptions. So it doesn't show any sites that may no longer be paying maintenance but may still be using our various modules. And the interesting trend here is the fact that if you compare it to the traditional product lifecycle curve as illustrated by the graph below, it would appear that we have been going through a growth phase, maturity phase, and now it's picked up again in a renewal phase where things have taken up again. And we initially were not sure why this was the case, and we thought we'd go off and ask a number of our business partners and end users. And some of the results, answers we got were that Orchid and Sage 300 provided good value. They were getting great support. It's a tried and tested solution. That for remote access, VPN and RDP technology provided mobility and flexibility required. Ease of use, a familiar environment. And for those wanting to run it on the cloud, there's a good private cloud option. Customizability and flexibility. And most importantly, relationship with the Sage business partner. Now, Orchid's modules fall into 5 different categories. Firstly, collaboration, which consists of notes and document management link. And those are 2 of our growth modules, and we'll be running through those both with you. Tailoring, automation and integration, consisting of Extender, remote action service, process scheduler and workflow anywhere. And this is another area that's enjoyed good growth, so we'll be running through Extender with you in some more detail. On the streamlining financial processes front, we have EFT Processing, inter-entity trade, and inter-entity transactions. And EFT Processing is our largest selling module. It has the biggest number of sites and continues to enjoy good growth, so we'll be running through that with you. We then have another two categories, budgeting, reporting, and business intelligence, which consists of Info Explorer, data views, optional tables, and report runner. And lastly, operations and inventory management, which consists of RMA, or return material authorizations, bin tracking, and freight SmartLink. Now, our first category, collaboration. These Orchid modules let you create, locate, update, and share information in intuitive, powerful ways that can be easily integrated into your everyday use of Sage 300. Notes lets you attach context-sensitive notes to Sage 300 screens, and Document Management Link gives you easy access to essential documents directly from those Sage 300 screens. Now, running through how these modules are tracking, both Document Management Link and Notes are doing very well. As you can see, Notes has been around for longer, whereas Document Management Link really only started going in 2014, but has enjoyed sharper growth. And right now, we are sitting at similar number of sites, but the growth continues, which is good. These graphs do reflect the trend of fully paid up sites each year. So these are sites that are paying either software assurance or maintenance or subscription. Notes allows you to attach context-sensitive notes to Sage 300 screens. It provides improved collaboration through better information sharing, saves time and improves customer service with information readily at hand, reduces reliance on offline content and notes held outside of Sage 300, supports on-the-job training with context-sensitive data entry guidelines, and supports remote working and multi-site operations. You have highly flexible configuration capabilities. So these context-sensitive notes can be set to work on any Sage 300 screen or third-party module which is developed using the Sage 300 SDK. Can be linked to any data up to 2 fields. So for example, you might be looking at a vendor and item number. And the notes can include rich text, hyperlinks, and even small images. And you can control who sees what by configuring role-based rules. You can create dynamic extended notes by combining with Orchid Extender, which we'll be running through a bit later. So you can have conditional notes. So for example, display contextual reminder only if certain conditions are met. On-the-fly notes, displaying year-to-date sales for a particular customer or real-time stock availability. Enhanced functionality, for example, drill down into open transactions from the order entry screen, or external cloud integration, so requesting current exchange rate or freight charge information. And with Document Management Link, we get easy access to documents from your Sage 300 screens. And this provides improved customer interactions with documents just a click away. Easily file, locate, and retrieve documents without leaving Sage 300. Support remote working by overcoming your reliance on physical documents. And it helps you make the paperless office a reality. We've got highly flexible configuration again, so you can control how and where the links to documents are displayed. It'll work on any Sage 300 screen and third-party SDK modules. It's working in a context-sensitive fashion, so you can link to any data, and once again up to 2 fields, for example, a vendor or an item. and most file types are supported, including the emails and attachments. There are different document storage and sharing options, and it builds in your existing document scanning and storage regime. Documents can reside in a shared network folder or Microsoft SharePoint, and you can map to your preferred cloud-based file sharing service, for example, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive. And you can add new documents by drag and drop, and you can email linked documents directly from Document Management Link using Microsoft Outlook. But now over to Natalie to run through these two modules in some more detail.
Thanks, Steve. Many users start using Document Management Link for AP invoices and AP vendor transactions. Here, we're just going to have a quick look at how this works in practice. Let's start with the AP vendor activity. I'm selecting my vendor, and I can see I have access to a note for that vendor, which I can edit if I have appropriate rights, or I could create a new note. I have a list of documents for this particular vendor, and I can double click on any of the files, PDF, Word document, messages, to open them and view the detail. As I go to the Transactions tab in Vendor Activity, I now have an additional box which actually filters the list of documents in that vendor folder by the specific invoice that I'm looking at. So here I'm looking at invoice 10001, now I'm looking at IN 120121, and as previously, I can double click and open the document, which can be a PDF, or as we see further down, a document file or an MSG file that I would have dragged from Outlook. So if we keep going down, and let's say I'm checking this and find that this particular invoice doesn't actually have any documents attached to it, I can then drill to my document, review that batch and entry number, and I can see when I'm entering the actual invoice or looking at an existing invoice, I see similar document that I see from the vendor activity screen. So I'm going to start Outlook and add my documents. And the documents, I can drag them from Windows Explorer, but also from Outlook. I can drag my email. As you can see, the document, the email message, has been renamed based on the invoice number that I had entered on the screen. I could also attach just the actual attachment, and let's minimize this. The attachment happens to be an image, so I can double click on it and see the image of the goods that I've bought. So this is how I would attach document as I'm doing my AP invoice entry. So now in my vendor activity, when I'm looking at this specific document, I can see the email and the image that I have saved against that particular invoice. And there's a lot of documentation on our website on how to get this particular configuration going in your database, and you can also see that in the Orchid sample data. As Steve mentioned in the introduction, Document Management Link applies to any Sage 300 screen developed in the SDK. So we have developed an example here against my bank reconciliation. So we've now configured Document Management Link to be attached to the Reconcile Statement screen. So when I'm doing it for this bank, I can attach a document here. I can do it by clicking the Add button this time. And if I click Explore, I can see that I've got a folder for bank documents per bank code CCB, and in this case I'm attaching all the documents for a particular calendar year in this folder. So next year, when I start the new year, a new 2023 folder will be created, and all the bank rec related documents will be filed in a folder within that bank per year. It's your choice where the documents go, whether it's a network folder or in SharePoint, and how you create your subfolders. And Document Management Link will create the folders per vendor or per bank or per customers on the fly. And while we're looking at this, I will just share with you a little tip that many of you would have seen in other presentations. But if you go into your system tray and click Options, while you have a Sage 300 screen open, so you can see if I go to my bank code field, I can see here the rotor ID of the screen that I'm on and the field name that I need to use for my configuration. So if you're trying to set up Document Management Link, or Notes for that matter, for a new screen, remember to use the tray options to find the exact field name that you are interested in. Let's now have a look at order entry, where we have configured a range of notes and documents, which may be a bit too much for a single Sage 300 screen, but it's easier to give you an idea as to what you can do. As I open the OE order entry screen, I can see a big blue box with instructions relating to using this particular screen. This note will always apply whenever the order entry screen opens, and I can edit it if I have the rights to, or I could create a new one. Let's look at a particular order, and we see the boxes change. I now have access to slightly different information. First, I have some order related documents, but here I have one folder per order. So you can see within my OE documents, I've got a folder per customer 1200 and a subfolder for the order number 1 with all the documents in there. Then further down, I have documents by item. As you can see, if I navigate through the grid and go from A11030 to A11050, I'm now seeing different labels and QA documents for the particular items. And a little bit further down, I also have a folder here with all customer invoices for 1200. It's at the bottom because generally I don't need it. I have configured the order of the boxes that I see in the tray for my requirements. And on this particular example, in order entry, I have a few boxes configured with my personal favorite combination of Orchid Modules, which is Extender and Orchid Notes. And there the possibilities are really endless. So let's have a quick look. Here I have access to the credit status for this particular customer. And here highlighted in blue with a hyperlink, I can view all my OE pending orders. So I can double click and view all the list of outstanding order for this particular customer. I could even double click on the particular order and open that order directly from the Information Manager panel. And when that order opens, as you can see, it is opening with the related notes and documents. And keep looking at this. In this little panel here, I've got sales history for 1200. And if I go a bit further down and navigate through the different items, I can see that I have my sales history for this customer item combination, including a calculation of the average price for that item for that customer. So to get started with Document Management Link, you can refer to the help, the online help, which has some quick start videos and a more advanced video, training and a quick start, and also a list of very common questions and topics that relate to Document Management Link, such as how to set it up using SharePoint, some example configuration, and how to configure the tray. The Notes help has a very similar structure, where I can have my quick start video. It's less than 30 minutes and you'll be up and running with everything that we've looked at today. And some tips on note security, entering notes, importing notes, and some examples of extended notes. So back to you, Steve, for the next part of the presentation.
The next category we're looking at is streamlining financial processes. These Orchid modules help you to improve productivity and accuracy while taking the drudgery out of processing complex but routine transactions. EFT Processing lets you streamline Sage 300 payments and receipts using electronic funds transfer. It works with AR, with AP, and also with the Canadian and US payrolls. Inter-entity transactions allows you to automatically generate offsetting entries in each company based on highly configurable rules, and inter-entity trade creates reciprocal documents in Sage 300 when related entities trade products and services with each other. Now we're going to be focusing on EFT processing. So EFT has been our biggest selling module for quite some time, and as you can see from the graph here, the number of sites, fully paid up sites, continues to increase year on year. EFT processing streamlines Sage 300 payments and receipts. Payments, it lets you pay vendor invoices, streamline customer refunds. On the receipt front, it allows you to use direct debit for recurring rents, subscriptions, etc. And with payroll, you can pay employees by EFT, and the payrolls we work with here are the Sage 300 US and Canadian payrolls. It allows you to increase accuracy, security, and auditability, supports remote networking and the paperless office, emailing of remittance advices, pay slips, remuneration statements. We've got numerous security features, including encryption of bank account details. It allows for faster processing, which means happier customers, vendors, and employees. And we support over 800 bank formats, and new ones can be created for you on request. Cost savings mean for a quick return on investment. You're getting savings on bank transaction fees, no more expensive paper check stationery, reduced printing, handling, and postage costs. And you've got automatic EFT file creation, which avoids duplicate data entry. So moving that on to Natalie to run through with you in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Steve. In this presentation, we will highlight some new features of EFT processing, some key points that prospects like to hear about, and some common questions, mainly around security. Over the years, EFT processing has proven to be a module with a very quick ROI, thanks to its ability to generate files for payments and direct debits in a large number of bank formats. If you change bank, have new requirements such as international wire transfers, EFT can cater for them. So let's start with a quick demo of creating a file. For this, we will use the web screens, which are now available for AP and AR payments. I'm going to log into Sage 300 on the web screen, and we're going to go straight to creating an EFT file. Select my payment batch. Click Create. My file has been created. Once it's been created, I can print my remittance advice. When I choose Print in the delivery method of vendor customer, the remittance advice will be emailed to the vendor if that is the vendor delivery method that we have selected. My emails have been sent, And there they are. If I'm trying to open, I'm prompted to enter the password because I've configured EFT to password protect the remittance advice. As you can see, the bank details here are also masked. So these are some of the security options that have been around for a while, but maybe a bit less well known than the other features of EFT processing. And let's say I need to create that file again. I'm seeing that user Anne does not have rights to recreate the EFT file. So this is a new security option that was added recently. And obviously if I need to recreate the file, I can either log in as another user who has more rights or change Anne's security rights if she should be able to recreate files. Let's now have a quick look at EFT vendors logged in as Anne. And I'm going to select one of the vendors I paid recently. You can see that the remittance password and the auto-generated remittance passwords are protected. This is because Anne doesn't have rights to see passwords and bank details. So it's all masked there. And if I'm added a payment reference and save these changes to my vendor, you can see the status has now been changed to entered. So this vendor now needs to be approved by a user with more rights. And to do this, we will log back into Sage 300 as a power user, and we will use the desktop screens. Let me log into Sage 300. And let's find our vendor, Leon Industries. You can see its status is entered, which means it can't currently be used in an EFT file because it's waiting to be approved. And logged in as an administrator, I can change the status to active, check everything. To enable this way of working for EFT vendors, we configure this in EFT options, and here we set the default vendor status to entered. As we have demonstrated logged in as Anne, we've also selected to encrypt the vendor BSB and account number and to use a remittance advice password. So you can choose to configure this for AP to do vendor payments, and similarly you can do it for AR customer refunds and AR direct debit, as well as employees when you're using EFT payroll. Another important aspect of security in EFT processing is in the bank and in your file format. So if we look at this bank, I could change the output destination of the file to use SFTP. And to connect to SFTP, we have three options: with a password, with a key file, and using two-factor authentication on the FTP site. So let's change that. I can enter my SFTP details, have access to a button to test the SFTP file upload, and that is a newish feature of EFT processing. And once I have configured this, when I create the file will be uploaded directly by EFT processing to the FTP site, which can be the bank's site or my own site if the bank doesn't provide this. So this adds one extra level of security to what you can do with the EFT file. As you know, there are many file formats. Some have more security features than others, so this is something that you need to discuss with your bank if you want some stronger file formats with hash totals or security questions. And a reminder that EFT also supports positive pay. We are regularly asked if EFT processing support PGP encryption of the EFT file. The answer is not out of the box, but yes, using an extender and an extender app, which is available on the extender marketplace. So you can have a look at this on the Orchid website, extender marketplace, and look at the PGP encryption of bank files. So you configure which of your EFT file types are to be encrypted, and the then extender will then use the public key provided by the bank to encrypt the file. And in many cases, this is used in conjunction with SFTP, where the encrypted file is then automatically uploaded to the bank using SFTP. And if you have any questions on this, you can get in touch with us. This was a brief highlight of some of the key features of EFT processing. Its ability to create an EFT file, to email remittance advice to the payees, as well as highlighting some security features of EFT processing. Back to you, Steve.
The next area we're looking at is tailoring, automation, and integration. And these Orchid modules support codeless tailoring of Sage 300, bespoke customization using Python, automation of critical processes, and integration with external applications. We'll be looking at Extender in some more detail, which an Extender is a cost-effective way to configure, customize, and extend Sage 300. What works very well with Extender are our remote action service, which allows you to progress an Extender workflow without needing to be logged into Sage 300. Workflow Anywhere, which gives you an Extender workflow console for your mobile device, and Process Scheduler, which lets you schedule your critical business processes to run automatically and unattended. Extender has been growing rapidly, as you can see from this graph, which is showing fully paid up sites year on year. Extender really hit the market in 2015, and it's gone up like anything since then in terms of numbers of sites. And this area we found has had tremendous growth because people are after that customizability of their underlying ERP processes. So Extender provides a cost-effective way to configure, customize, and extend Sage 300. Caters for business requirements that can't be met out of the box by Sage 300. It allows for bespoke business logic without the cost and complexity of SDK development. It can be used with Sage core modules or third-party modules that have been developed in the SDK. And all configurations and scripts are held within your Sage 300 database. In terms of configuration, you can do codeless configuration with the configurator version of Extender. You've got alerts and notifications, which are triggered by changes within Sage 300. You've got logging, so you can see what changes, when it changed, and who changed it. And you've got workflows, so you can set up workflows for approvals and other business processes. The next level of Extender Developer, allows you to customize how Sage 300 works. And with this, we have Python scripting. We've got view-level business logic. So this handles validations, defaults, automations, and the like. We can create new screens and customize existing classic screens. And we can create our own new tables or views within Sage 300. We can then extend what's happening. We can run apps, execute external applications, or use with our mobile apps, and we can integrate. So, for example, real-time synchronization with external systems. With Extender, we now have a marketplace, and this allows you to have a look through and decide if you need any of these apps, and also to see exactly what apps have been created for Extender. Will give you a feel for what type of thing Extender can be used for. So these apps are specifically designed for use with Orchid Extender by Python developers who customize Sage 300. Some of these apps are plug and play, and others form a base for bespoke customization. We've got our remote action service, which allows you to progress workflow actions remotely. You'll get a notification via email that something needs approval or needs to be acted on, and you can then act on that remotely. The great thing about this remote action service is that we don't need to open any ports to the firewall, and it still lets you work on your Sage 300 data from outside the firewall. We then have Workflow Anywhere, which allows you to, via an app, work with Extender's workflow. There's a made-for-mobile version of Extender, the Extender Workflow Console, which you can install from the mobile app store, for example, Google Play or Apple Store. You can monitor your current workflow task list, and you can action them in Sage 300, but do all of this from your mobile device. Now, passing this through to Natalie to have a look at in some more detail.
Thanks, Steve. An Extender is a world in itself, so in this demonstration we will highlight a few examples of what can be done with Extender Configurator and Developer Edition to match Sage 300 to your business rules and processes. We'll start with the simplest thing you can do with Extender, which is logging. You configure what fields you want to log, and you can log fields from Sage 300 core modules as well as third-party modules developed in the SDK, and you configure what fields on what view you want to log. In this example, we're logging AP vendor changes, so if the vendor name changes, so let's change this one to this, and we're also logging if the country changes. We'll try that for vendor. We are logging changes on AR customer as well. We'll change the customer credit limit. And as you can see, at the same time as logging, we're actually also sending an email alert to a configured user saying that the credit limit has been changed. And this is what you can do with Extender Configurator Edition. So let's have a look at our Extender inquiries log. And we can see everything that has been logged in this database. I can filter by field or customer, so let's look at all the view for AR0024, which is our AR customer. I can see that the credit limit was changed from this big amount to 1999, was changed again today. That's the one we just did. I can also see that customer 1100 credit limit was changed from 18 to 19. And if I clear the filter, I can see all the changes that have happened. So changes to the vendor name, changes to the country, logging changes to the order ship via, to the on hold field, to the EFT bank file type. There's a lot of logging happening in EFT, but out of the box there is no logging to EFT bank, so this is something you can configure with Extender logging. We've now built a little extender module which is configured to log a bunch of field changes in Sage 300, and we can export this configuration from our module. So this is my logging, which has one event, logging changes, and it is attached to all these fields, all these views in Sage 300. I can export this module. We'll create a file that I can import into another Sage 300 database for ease of ongoing maintenance. The next thing that extender can be used for is to do some data validation. In our example, we're doing the validation on the AR customer view, and any script, any validation attached to the view applies to the web screens as well. So here, if I go to my customer, I'm logged in as Anne. I choose customer 1500. On the processing tab, I can change my customer credit limit, and let's say I'm trying to make it 20,000. I'm getting an error saying that my maximum credit limit is 10,000. So I've configured limits that depend on which user it is logged on, and that applies to the web screen as well as the classic desktop screens. So now if I make this, let's say 9,000, I can save my customer credit limit change, and I've configured extender to send an email alert, which is also sent from the web screen. Another component of using extender to tailor your Sage 300 to your business requirements is some scripts to facilitate your data entry. One very common example is updating optional fields on a grid. Traditionally, without extender, to update optional fields, you've got to go on the line, click on this button and select your optional fields. With extender, we've configured it to display on the grid two optional fields that are attached to AP invoice entry, entity and project. So entity is a finder, so I can make it entity 2, and project, don't think I have configured values in the finder, but if I had, I would see them here, and I can choose my project and add my line. So these fields act as if they were entered on the optional fields pop-up in Sage 300, but you can enter them directly in the grid. And we have another example doing something very similar when entering GL transactions. Enter some amounts, and I've got my entity, which I can select from the finder or type. And this is generally used in conjunction with inter-entity transactions. I can move these columns around so they act like a normal column on the Sage grid. And there are a few examples of these scripts on the website. In terms of facilitating data entry, we can also set some default value beyond what Sage 300 can do. In accounts receivable, you can configure optional fields on the AR invoice detail line, but you can't link them to an optional field on items. In this example, we have added an extender module to facilitate entering optional fields on an AR invoice. I'm creating an item invoice. I'm going to choose my favorite customer, Mr. Ronald Black. As you can see, my notes by customer have been configured to show as well. So just a little reminder. And as I'm choosing the item, BK360, you can see that the item's color is defaulted to red, and this is configured in a custom table. We have also added this particular optional field to the grid. So the optional field is here as well, color red. And this default value is coming from the item. So if I now add another line with a different item to this invoice and go to the right. The item color defaults to green. So this makes my data entry easier, but it also ensures that I have less errors in my data entry for optional fields. Another thing you can do is add buttons to screens and drill between Sage 300 screens. So in this example, we're showing an example extender module to let you facilitate navigating between AR and EFT, or AR and AP and EFT. We've added an EFT button to the AR customer screen. So if I click on this, it will open the EFT customer pre-populated with the customer number that I was looking at. Similarly, if I'm looking at my payment batch list, select this batch, I can click on the EFT button that's been added to the screen, and the create EFT file is pre-populated with the batch numbers that I was looking at. Another dimension of what you can do with Extender is to automate some processes in Sage 300. Think of repetitive tasks that are time-consuming and or error-prone. You can automate them to reduce data errors and to improve productivity. For example, in our scenario, we want to print and email order confirmation and invoices to a customer. So if I look at this order, it's been shipped yet, so I can send an order confirmation. We've added this button to print the order confirmation to a PDF, which will be called after the order number and saved in a folder per customer. It's all configurable, which report you run to generate the PDF and where you're saving the PDF. And then it's actually emailing it to Mr. Ronald Black as well. I'm adding these message to confirm that it's happened because we find it's easier in demonstration purposes, but this is again through configuration in your script whether you show these messages or not. So here I've got my order confirmation that's been emailed to Mr. Ronald Black, and it's also been saved. Once I've shipped and invoiced the order, let me find another one that has been invoiced. This one, I could do the same thing, save the invoice as a PDF and email it to the customer. We can add similar buttons to the OE invoice screen, or you could also do it automatically as the invoice is inserted. We have similar examples in purchase order where we can print and email a purchase order to a vendor. And in this scenario, we've split printing and the emailing just so that we can demonstrate that it is your choice whether you do it in one go or in two goes. You can create transactions through the script. So, for example, some IC assemblies when orders are processed, or you can also write scripts to import records. It's another scenario where there are endless possibilities as to what you can do. You just need to think of your process, where your pain points are, what would you like to do more efficiently. The most recent component of Extender is the workflow capabilities. This lets you add workflow for alerting and approvals to Sage 300 records such as master files, AR customer, AP vendor, IC items, EFT bank, EFT options, transaction header files such as OE orders, purchase requisitions, purchase orders, and batches such as GL journal batches, AP invoices, AP payment, AR refund, AR invoices. And right now we are logged into the Workflow Anywhere mobile app, and we're using the Windows 10 app. So I'm seeing all the workflows that have been allocated to Anne in this case. You can see that Susan has updated an IC item, and this is more of a workflow to alert, and where the person being alerted needs to acknowledge that they have seen this change. Others are more like approval. This purchase order is waiting for approval by Anne. This PO has already been approved by a manager but is now waiting for the second level approval. I've also got some credit limit approval examples. Let's prove this purchase order, which has already been approved by the manager. If I log in as Anne, I can do that final approval, or I could also reject. As I'm approving, I can add a comment. Okay, if delivered before the end of the month, and then I can complete my approval. As I'm approving, it's now connecting to Sage 300, progressing that purchase order, and sending an email if I have configured my workflow accordingly. So this was just to give you a little bit of an overview of the mobile app. But to continue looking at the workflow, let's log on to Sage 300 and look at the workflow console on the Sage 300 desktop. If I log on to the Sage 300 desktop and look at the workflow console and select everything that was in there, I'm going to see basically what I was seeing in the mobile app, which is all the records that are assigned to Anne. I can see that there's 2 POs that are still waiting for Anne to approve. Let's go into the workflow log and see everything that's happened today. I can filter by today's date, and this is what we've seen happening by Anne, and has acknowledged that notification, has approved this particular purchase order, and has rejected purchase order 77. If I want to see what's happened to PO 79, I can clear my filter and then just filter of only PO 79, and I can see that PO 79 was created by Anne, was first approved by a user called demo, and was finally approved again by Anne. And we can see the amount, and we can see the comments that were entered by clicking on the values tab there, and I can see the comment that I entered there. Okay, if delivered before the end of the month. So let's have another look at the workflow console. This time we're going to look at all workflow, because Anne has got security clearance to look at everything. And I can see all the different types of approval that we've configured. We can approve PJC contracts. We can approve RMA. From here, I can actually drill down and open the actual RMA that was created. I can approve EFT vendor changes. I can approve AP payment batches. And I can drill down and look at the actual payment batch. See whatever is in that batch. And then when I'm happy with this, I can approve. If we look at what is in a workflow template quickly, we start the workflow here, and in that first step, we do some configuration and we work out, does this batch actually need approval? It can be only approve if the batch total is above a certain amount. Then it's waiting. I can then approve or reject. And when I'm approving, I'm doing a bunch of things, updating the description to say that the batch has been approved. I'm setting its status to ready to post. And I'm sending an email to confirm to the user who started that workflow that it's been approved. And I'm posting the payment batch at the same time. There are a lot of videos as well, with detailed training, building a workflow from scratch, and also a video showing you how to use the examples that we have built and uploaded over time.
We'd now like to run through how to get going with these various modules if you're not already familiar with them. And Natalie will run through with you some of the resources that we've got on our website, including brochures, videos, case studies, the software itself, training guides, other technical resources, sample data, and the like. Over to you again, Natalie.
Everyone is trying to do more with less and can't remember everything in detail. One of our objectives over the last few years has been to make resources available and go beyond the standard F1 help that mainly describes each field on the screens. We've been developing more tutorials, videos, and articles describing steps to get started, as well as more complex setup. We've added sample scripts, Info Explorer cubes, example configurations for nodes and document management link. And we realize it's not always easy to find exactly what you're after. So here are some tips. First, don't hesitate to look at the product and solutions page of the Orchid website. On the EFT page, we have some high-level description of what EFT does, as well as some edition guides, as well as for all the products at the bottom of the page, links to resources, detailed presentation videos, training videos, including the EFT ROI calculator. Looking at Process Scheduler, for example, we have a similar structure, an overview, but also a detail of the actions available in the different levels of Process Scheduler. We also highlight some specific ways to use Process Scheduler with different modules such as Report Runner, Info Explorer, and Extender. And again, at the bottom, we have links to brochures and overview videos that you can send to your clients, as well as detailed training videos and some spotlights on some specific topics that relate to process schedulers. You can use the search functionality on the website and filter by resource type. This is a really nice way to find information. Let's say we're looking for something about optional fields, and we can refer to videos that we might have done around optional fields and optional tables. We can also filter on just extender scripts that relate to optional fields, and we can see here the samples that are available, like the ones we looked at in the earlier demonstration. Remember, you need to be logged into the website to access all the resources. In the product downloads area that you're all familiar with, this is where you download the modules for the different versions. You also have access to Orchid sample data by version. And a lot of what we've demonstrated today is configured in this sample data, as well as the application object model and NFR codes that you can use in-house and also for trial versions on client site. A more recent initiative is the online help. Let's look at EFT. We can access the release notes with detail of new features and product updates, the training and the user guides for EFT and other modules. We have a reference to the main training videos for the module, as well as popular topics to get started, and some troubleshooting tips. The security content we looked at in today's presentation on EFT is summarized here as well. The online help includes detailed descriptions of all the options and all the screens in Sage 300 and has its own search capabilities. We hope this provides some guidance into Orchid resources, and while we aim to make information and training material and marketing material more easily available, don't worry, we're still available to assist, so contact us on support@orchid.systems and we will try and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for your time. And now we're ready for Q&A.